Welcome to Radio OPAC, a division of the Ohio Prison Arts Connection. We get together every Friday, 11 a.m. with a special guest. You can see it's David Brown today. And we have a talk back at the end. Welcome, David. You know, OPAC is a group of people who connect the arts to people in prison and people outside of prison. And my name is Pat Wynn Brown, and I will be your host today. We welcome everyone, including our friends in correctional institutions in Ohio, because we send art packs in that include DVDs of the show. And we thank the Ohio prison system and Mike Davis for allowing this to happen. Thank you very, very much. There will be a talk back at the end with David, so join us. There will be a link for Zoom in the comments section. And you just press on that and you come on in the Zoom room. So we want to welcome David. Welcome to you today. How are you?
Good, Patty. How are you?
I'm good. David is the founder and creative director of Harmony Project, a wonderful group of people. I'm happy to be an alto in the group of 500. And the aim of this group is to unite a diverse community in song and in sharing and in service. It began in 2009. It's going strong. It's on a brief intermission during the pandemic, and we can talk more about that. But there are 1,000+ singers in various groups. There are 500 in the choir that I'm in downtown. There's school kids in choir, disabled people, people in prison, kids at South High School, Go Bulldogs. And of note, of the kids in choir at South High School, 100% of them graduate, and that is remarkable. In fact, David's 2 sons came from that school, South High School. How are they doing? How are Kool-Aid and Crispian doing?
They're doing great. They are about to start their last semester at Capital University, and they're going to be graduates of Capital University in December of 2020, which is just, can't believe it went by that fast.
Just like Dad. So that's terrific. And you were in New York for 15 years. I think you're in Columbus about 15 years now. Is it
11 now?
Now,
11
yeah,
now. Mm-hmm.
11 now. And so we're not singing together, but we're singing in our own homes. And a lot of us are carrying on our service because you're such an inspiration to us to do service that it's just a part of us. So we are either helping a neighbor with groceries or continuing to help at ORW through Zoom, and we can talk about that. But how are you and the staff doing and the choir members doing during this intermission?
Well, you know, how am I and the staff? I mean, I think as a team, we are like almost every other nonprofit organization, you know, just taking it one step at a time and seeing what this week allows us to do and what this week does not allow us to do. Reevaluating kind of, I think the new catchphrase that I'm hearing everybody use is reimagining and redesigning is what I keep hearing people saying over and over again. So we're reimagining the mission, redesigning it, kind of looking at how do we streamline kind of what our expectations were and yet stay in our lane and do what we do. And I think that for choir members like yourself, it's natural for people to kind of refer to and think of Harmony from the perspective of the 500-member choir, because it's really hard to ignore 500 voices singing at you, you know, in a theater or an arena. And when you see all those people out serving together, that's also a very formidable kind of like energy that's coming at you, you know. But I also think that what this time is doing for Harmony is that in all of our promotional materials and all of our fundraising materials and all of our grants and things that we write, we say that Harmony Project is not a choir, and it's not even really about music. That Harmony Project is about empowering voices, and the way that we do that is by building community, and we just happen to use music as a tool to help us do that. So to answer your question, how are the choir members doing? I think it's, you know, there's a diverse set of answers to that question. It's like there are diverse members of the choir. There are some folks who said, you know, this hasn't really impacted me that much. I've enjoyed kind of having quiet time. There are people who are who love being alone and being able to read and catch up on movies and catch up with friends on phones. And then there are those who the isolation has been debilitating. It's, been very traumatic and very difficult for them to not be able to see parents or grandparents, who are hospitalized or in care facilities. For our students, they've been separated from each other. They've been separated from their community, their safe community that we've built for them. Differently abled adults that we work with, facilities that had to shut down. They've had to return to homes where many of their parents or caregivers were unable to really care for them full time anyway. And so now they're back there, which creates an added stress. And then, of course, our men and our women who we reach out to at Ohio Reformatory and Pickaway Correctional. They're already isolated. They're already in a state of trauma. And to have added this extra layer of isolation has really been very challenging. And you can hear it and you can see it in the conversations and on their faces when we're able to Zoom with them and be in touch with them. So I think we're all just processing this enormous global trauma, and we're all trying to figure out our way through it. And some days are better than others, and some days we're the strong ones and we lift up the weak ones, and some days we're the weak ones and we hope somebody there is strong to lift us. And that's ultimately what the mission of Harmony Project is that the weaker voices are lifted up by the stronger voices, and when all the voices are combined, you don't hear the difference between the weak and the strong. You just hear one combined sound.
People, I'm sure, are asking you, and I've asked you, we've seen the little choirs in the Zoom boxes and the orchestras and the cars pull up to form a choir, and I'm sure people have asked you, well, what about a virtual concert? And what's your answer for that?
I don't really see the purpose of that right now, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that the curbside concerts are wonderful. I think they benefit a very small group of people in that moment, and it makes people feel good to see it, and I'm all about that. But the same reason that Harmony never accepts invitations for 20 and 30 members of our choir to go perform somewhere, and the same reason that we will only do like a minimum of like 150 people is because our mission is different than a choir's mission. A choir's mission is for the choir to perform. Harmony Project is not a choir. Harmony Project is an organization that is building community through music and service. So if we were to start doing like 10 people here and 10 people there, first of all, there's 500 of us, so that's 50 different groups of 10 that we would need to coordinate. And number two, I think it's okay for people to miss this. I think it's okay for people to not be able to experience it right now, and to understand that there is a cost that goes with keeping people safe. And while I know that that is a debatable topic in our country today, it's not debatable for me as the creative director of the organization. And, on March the 9th, we made that call, that very first rehearsal, to cancel that, when a lot of people were like, well, let's have it the 9th, but not the next week. And sometimes you just have to make these tough decisions. And the decision right now is, for us, it's how do we reach our students who are isolated? How do we reach our differently abled adults who are isolated? How do we reach our men and our women in prisons who are isolated? How do we combine our unique talents and energies to reach those populations? I feel like most of the members of the choir can deal and can find their way through this moment, while Harmony focuses on the weakest, the frailest, and the most fragile that we serve. And that is going to be our priority right now. And when we can sing safely again, we're going to blow the roof off the place.
Yes, we will. And what's happening is very unusual, because at Radio OPAC here, and thank you for joining us, everybody. In case you're just joining us, with David Brown from Harmony Project. There will be a talk back with David at the end of this show. But you're able to do something that a lot of people we're hearing from prison work across the country cannot do. You're actually zooming in to ORW. I don't know that you are in Pickaway.
We have been at Pickaway, And then that was put on hold for a while, but we're hearing we might be able to get back in there.
And so at ORW is really where all this started. And it's not easy to get a program in a prison. You may have a lot of things that you want to do and you're very excited about it, but it's a very difficult process to be approved for this and to prove yourself that this is of merit and you can be safe and secure there and it benefits people. But how did you first get into the Ohio Reformatory for Women?
So it started with, I believe I first read The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And then I called Dan Sharp at the Columbus Foundation. And I started telling him, I was like, look, it makes sense that we should be there. You know, we're in these shelters, we're in these schools, you know, we're going to places. And I'm not saying that music wasn't there before because, you know, Healing Broken Circles, Kathy Roma. I mean, there's a list of people who've been doing this a lot longer than Harmony Project and David Brown. So I want to acknowledge that first. But there wasn't something like this at ORW. And so I went to ORW for a meeting with then Warden Janine Trim and soon to be Warden, Deputy Warden at that time, Ronnie Burks. And the idea at that day was not that I was going to be at ORW. The meeting was just at ORW, and they wanted me to go into a men's prison. Whoever was calling this meeting was hoping that I would maybe be willing to go into a men's facility. And, you know, I had my own stuff going on about a men's facility. I had fear. I was afraid, not physically. I was not afraid that they would harm me. I was more afraid emotionally of being gay, walking into this situation, not being accepted. You know, I felt more comfortable around the women. And so I asked, could I maybe start at ORW? And it began with just me driving up there on Wednesdays or Thursdays, whatever day it was back then. And I would just schlep up on, 7 o'clock in the morning and get there and go in, and they would be there, and we would just sing a few songs together and just talk.
What were their reactions to you in the very beginning? Were people just kind of checking you out or saying, I can't sing, I don't want my voice to be heard? Were they shy? Did you hit it off immediately? What was it like?
Well, I mean, I think that there was a trust issue at first, which is understandable in prison, because number one, they're wondering, are you there for you? Are you there to make yourself feel better and to alleviate some of your guilt? And then are you just going to disappear once you've done your project? Or is this for real? Are you coming in to invest in who we are? And so I think that, look, the first few weeks, it was just a lot of silliness, a lot of self-deprecation, a lot of letting them know that I don't take myself too seriously. And that, I think, warmed them up a little bit. And then once I started kind of revealing some of my own flaws and the cracks, and they started seeing that I wasn't somebody coming in thinking that I was going to help them in some way, but I was just coming in to be with them. And that I expected
enjoy their company.
I expected them to help me as much as I was supposed to help them. And so I'm lucky because we just kind of took off. And I think that the key was that I didn't go in with a prescribed set list of music. And the goal wasn't to teach them how to read music or how to perform music beautifully. It wasn't about posture and note reading and intonation. All those things are important, and there are plenty of benefits to teaching those things, even in a prison. But for me, it was about storytelling. And it was about finding songs that told their stories. And that first week, that I took in there, and I went in there with the Winona Judd song, When I Reach the Place I'm Going. The lyrics says, when I reach the place I'm going, I will surely know my way, and I will turn and look inside me and bid farewell to one more day. And the next verse talks about, I will fly beyond this valley. I will open up the gate. And it's all about releasing, and it's all about letting go, and it's all about freedom in a very different way than maybe they had been talking about freedom. And so when people who didn't even like country music and Winona's style of music, when I saw the tears coming from their eyes and I saw the shoulders starting to relax and those tense jaws starting to relax. I was like, this is it. This is what works. They need an outlet to tell their stories in a way with words that maybe they can't find within themselves yet. But
And the
maybe
songs do that, and the
will give
lyrics
them
do
those
that.
lyrics. Yeah.
And the freedom, and to get out of that valley. They go to South Africa. They Skype with children at an orphanage with Kathy Kobacher's group, and they're able to do puppet shows and talk to the kids through Skype, which is an amazing thing. You've gone to visit those children and then Skype back to the ladies at ORW, and you've given the ladies another opportunity which cannot be minimized. First of all, the logistics of it, and second of all, what it does to somebody to perform for 7,000 people when the women are able to come out as a choir, those allowed, with security, with all they have to go through in the prison in order to bring people out of the prison, which is very unusual, and to perform on that stage and to have people stand up for them. What have you seen with your eyes as you stand in front of these women who maybe have never been recognized for a single thing in their life for the good? What do you see?
Or only recognized for the behavior that got them into
Got them
prison.
there.
Yeah. So two things. One, when you're talking about them Skyping with South Africa, that I think is important to mention, is that sometimes it's easy to miss this in the Skype. And that is, these are children without mothers. And these are mothers separated from their children. So there is this powerful, elixir that happens when these voices begin to sing to each other. It's not just healing for these children, it's healing for these women. And the separation I don't want to diminish or minimize the separation that they're experiencing with their own families, but there is something that occurs in those moments. And I would say that it's the same thing that you see when the women are allowed to come out and perform. The very first time the women were allowed to come out was at the Ohio Theater. So, we started big. Rather than at a small thing, we just said, let's go for it. And Jane Pauley happened to be in the house that night, which, that's a pretty big platform. And the women were so anxious and so nervous backstage. And, they did not know where they were going because the prison doesn't tell them. They didn't know until that morning that they were even going to leave the prison and do something. And then they are driving there and they find out where they are when they get there. So there's all of that going on too, which the audience probably doesn't even perceive. And when they walked out on that stage, we had timed it so that the very first time they performed, we started with the performance on a giant screen behind the then 250 voice choir. And then the women came in halfway through. And so it surprised the audience. They didn't know this was happening. And when that audience went to its feet, and I mean, obviously, no, I couldn't really literally feel what they were feeling because I'm not them. But I could feel what they were feeling, because, it was just so present. And there was such a sense of pride and relief and acceptance. And, for some of those women, the first time in their lives to have ever, and for that moment to not be in an intimate space, but to be in a theater in front of a couple of thousand people, and to have all these people behind you, and you're standing there in a prison uniform with an ankle bracelet on, the humility, that many of us will never be able to even experience, like the combination of all the things that were going on there. So when I see them walk into the park last summer, for the first time ever, they let them come to an outdoor event, which we weren't sure they were going to do. And you mentioned the security with them, but here's what's happened. Over the course of so many years, a trust has been built and a trust has been established now with the state, with ODRC, with ORW, and now even with Pickaway. And these women, they walked across this lawn without their guards. And they walked up onto that stage because their guards are still where they need to be because it is what it is and we can't change that. But there is a trust now. And there's not just a trust between ODRC and Harmony Project as an organization. there is a trust between the guards and the women. And I think that that's important. And I think that one of the beautiful things that have come out of this is that people say to me at these events, what do I call them? You know, and I say, women. And it's like, oh, and you see a light bulb go off in their mind. It's like, you just call them women, and you call the men men, because that's what they are. They're women and men, and they're serving time.
And you talked, this is so great that you talked about Harmony Project. It's not a choir. It's this service, it's this sharing, it's the opportunity for people to do these things, because Harmony Project is about harmony, building harmony in people's spirits, harmony between the prison administration and what people are trying to do coming in. You opened the door for me to come in and do my work. You've been an inspiration for Radio OPAC of what we can do, how to present things to the prison, how to do it properly. Harmony Project has built the harmony in our community for artists to come together, to come into the prison and do remarkable things that only the arts can do. It's a special medicine that they can do. And what we've all found is the service does more for us than it does for anybody else when we do the service. And there's someone who will come on this NBC News video, Lisa Kelly, fellow alto in Harmony Project, who will talk about service. And then we ask everybody to please join us after this interview for the talk back, so you can talk with David and bring insights or questions or comments to it. And the link will be on the Zoom. But let's see what Lisa Kelly has to say on NBC News.
When Lisa Kelly joined Harmony Project, she was excited to sing with the choir, but more excited about the opportunity to serve. The program that caught her attention was the prison program. Having spent time as a student teacher at a juvenile detention facility, she was excited what she could do now with the Tapestry Therapeutic Community at the Ohio Reformatory for Women.
The first time, you know, you don't know what to expect. You hear you're going to go into a prison and a little nervous, but to be honest, the second we walked in that door and the women they cheered. And they looked no different than anyone you'd see on the streets. And they aren't. Any of us could be in that same situation if we had, made a mistake, just like they did.
Lisa and the other members of the Harmony Project sing with the women, they do service projects, even Skype with orphans in Africa. Out came the sun. All of these things contributing to the women's rehabilitation and growth.
They're becoming more sure of themselves, gaining some self-esteem, and they're really trying to support each other so that when they do get out, they can go back to being positive members of the community. My family will tell you that I've probably gotten a lot more back than I think I've given. It has truly been a blessing in my life. They have, the women have helped me in certain ways to deal with situations that, everyday life throws at you. And I'm so happy that I can do it.
So that was wonderful to hear from this volunteer, but I think there are about 60,000 hours of volunteer service going on with Harmony Project, David. And we may not be singing, but we're sharing, we have shared, we are sharing, we will share, and it's thanks to you. And I know you're humble, but thanks.
Well, I was going to say, listen, you've given me way too much credit on this call, but I will receive some of it and say thank you for it, and the rest of it I will just kind of reflect back. One thing I want to say watching that clip, it is so incredibly powerful to watch that clip and know two things. One, at the beginning, all the faces were blurred, because when we first went there, they told us that was the rules. We challenged those rules. You don't have to blur the faces anymore, which is great. Number two, of the faces that were not blurred, that had been approved when that video was made, many of those women are now on the outs, which is great. They're on the outside. So they have done their time, and they are now back in the community, contributing in the community, which is where they should be.
And thank you for helping them to do that, because I'm sure your spirit has given them harmony in their souls in order for them to make that tough transition back into society. So now we're going to be joining our Talkback group with David. So just press the Zoom link there and come to Talkback, and know that next week's guest will be Darren Bell, and he works in music in restorative justice. So David, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be part of Harmony Project and to continue the harmony. You can't stop the harmony. You can't stop that.
Thank you, and thank OPAC as well. Thank you so much.
All right, let's go talk to everybody.
Okay.